Hello everyone, MBZ here. Before we get into the show, there were just a couple of things I wanted to address up the top here. So first of all, I am trying to get the show on iTunes, but that is proving a little bit more difficult than I first envisioned. I'm not sure when it will happen, but we're trying to do our best to get it up there, so just stick with it for the moment, and as soon as we figure it all out, we will be sure to get all the episodes up to iTunes as soon as possible. Second thing I want to say is that unfortunately we hit some audio snags once again this week. We'll hopefully try and resolve those next time. We're kind of learning as we go along. It's all a learning process. So unfortunately the final segment of the show will be using Skype audio as opposed to individual audio, which is what we use for the rest of the segments, which just makes the quality sound nicer. So that's just what you're going to get, unfortunately, at the end. I hope it's bearable for you, and I hope you enjoy the show regardless. So thanks for listening, and let's get on with it. Hello everyone, and welcome to Now You're Playing with Power, a Nintendo podcast. This is episode 2. We're well into the swing of things here, and joining me as always, or as one episode goes so far, is Bali.
Hello everyone. Hi MBZ. Good evening.
Good evening, dear sir. So we've got an interesting show for you guys tonight. This is going to be basically Zelda heavy. Both of us have been playing the brand new Zelda: A Link Between Worlds for 3DS, and we have some deep impressions. So we're gonna get into that. But before we do that, we'll just lay out the segments we're going to deal with. So Bali, tell us what's we gonna be hearing?
Cool. Yep. So we're gonna start off with a non-spoiler cast, so we're not going to give away anything pretty much about A Link Between Worlds. So we're going to talk about everything in the game without giving away any of the plots, the dungeons, any specifics. We're just going to talk about our general views of the game. Then we're going to do a bit of listener mail. So a few people emailed in, we're going to reply to those. And then at the end of the podcast, if you want to turn off, then you can, but we're going to do a spoiler cast for Zelda. So basically as far as we got to in the game, which is pretty far for both of us, we're going to reveal everything and just talk about what we think about it. So so
basically a Zelda sandwich with some listener mail filling in between.
Exactly.
A bit of a poultry in between segment, but that's fine. we can get some heavy bread here and there. So
it's like one of those KFC burgers where the buns are the actual chicken and the middle is like
it's just like a slice of bread in the middle.
It's a bit of bread in the middle of.
So our proverbial chicken sandwich coming up for you guys. I think it's a good idea because we're putting the Zelda stuff at the end for spoilers. So obviously, if you don't want to be ruined on it and you're still playing through the game, then you can avoid that without too much trouble and not really miss anything, which is good. So before we do that, I have a few impressions on Mario 3D World, which actually came out a couple of days ago here in the UK. That was actually in the US. Zelda and Mario came out on the same day, 22nd of November, which was like Tearaway also came out, which I also bought, and the Xbox One came out, which I didn't buy because I'm not spending money on that. Fucking 430 quid, no thank you. Heavy duty. But that was a big day for the US. Thankfully we got like a week of break between Mario and Zelda here, so didn't have to concentrate on them both at once. Could kind of give Zelda the focus and jump to Mario. I've been playing a couple of worlds of that. I've on the third world right now, and the way that I play, the way that I played 3D Land on 3DS anyway, was I went basically from the beginning, and I was like, I'm gonna get all the secrets in every level before I move on to the next world, and that's basically how I'm rolling with it. In fact, I basically just go each individual level. If I don't get everything in it, I'll go back through it. If I don't get everything the second time, I'll go back through it a third time. So that's just the way I like to do it to make sure that I'm not...
Why are you so hardcore?
I don't know, man. How is it that you played 3D Land? You're doing it a little bit differently.
Well, I'll admit I've not finished the very end of that game, but I just sort of went through it and got what I could get, and then I've been going back through the levels and picking up everything. So gives me sort of 2 runs through the game, and I quite like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I had to go back and do 2 runs of 3D Land, and everyone does if they want everything, because you have to beat every level with Luigi as well as Mario. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I felt like the reason I did that on that game was because if I had basically by doing and getting every single thing in the level, it meant on my second run through with Luigi, I could literally just run through and beat them really quickly without having to worry about the secrets.
Which character have you been playing as?
So I basically gave all of them a try, and this is the thing with 3D World, is it brings back the 4 characters from from the original Mario Brothers 2 on NES. And
GBA.
Yeah, well, the remake was on GBA, which was... God, the fucking naming conventions for the GBA games are so asinine. Like, it's...
when we were young, I just thought all 3 of them were brand new games.
So did I. Like,
I didn't even realize they were remakes till way later.
Yeah, we were kind of ignorant in our Nintendo knowledge back then.
Tell me about it.
So we were like, oh yeah, it's a Mario game on Game Boy Advance. This is new and cool. And I think it was like probably the first 2D Mario game I played was Mario Brothers 2 on GBA. So yeah, those 4 characters about, which are Toad, Peach, Luigi, and Mario, of course. And I tried them all out and tried to kind of get a feel for them. I will say that when I started playing the game, it felt really weird in terms of how you control the characters. All of them felt quite slow to me, which I don't really like, and maybe this is because I hadn't played 3D Land in a long time, and maybe it does feel similar to that, but just getting back into that kind of rhythm and playing a 3D Mario, I don't know, it feels very different to like how Galaxy controlled. I feel that you have to basically... I honestly always...
But isn't there a run button in this?
Yeah, I always hold down the run button because I don't feel it's quick enough, and I don't think I'm getting enough speed without using that, so I'm kind of forcing myself to do that because, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's clicking with me in that way, just the normal run speed.
Galaxy didn't have run button, did it? You just ran.
No, and I think you just ran, and it had a very nicely paced rhythm to it with the way that you move with Mario, so it's not very similar here. And Toad is the fastest character, and I do like that, but again, he doesn't really have too great jumping skills, and I kind of want more balance. So Mario is basically who I'm rolling with in general as the most balanced character, because though Peach is helpful with her kind of floaty thing, I tend to misjudge things because I'm so used to playing as Mario in these kind of games that having that float kind of fucks me up a bit more than usually I would do. But I have tested her. I've tried Luigi, and Luigi's okay, but he does feel a little bit harder to control in this game. His kind of his leg jump, where he just goes like crazy with his legs, is really difficult to get a hold of as well. So I think that Mario is the safe choice here, and that's the one that I'm going to be rolling with probably throughout the most of the game.
Yeah, Johnny from RFN agrees with you. He's like, he tried them all, and then he felt, you know what, Mario feels the most balanced by a long way, so I'm just going to play through with him basically, and I can understand that, I guess.
No, definitely. I heard like I was listening to the Bombing in the AM with Patrick Klepig, the Giant Bomb podcast, and he played through the entire game as Peach because
he's a 10-year-old girl.
No, yeah, at heart, Patrick Klepik is a 10-year-old girl. No, he was talking about how the float really helped him, and it aided him getting to the top of the flagpole every time to make sure he didn't screw that up, and it helped him to kind of just correct his jumps. But I just feel like I'm not really into the rhythm with Peach and her jumping and her abilities there. So that's kind of thing. But yeah, no, I'm rolling with Mario, and so far it's very early on. It's I can't really say that I've been surprised or blown away, because I feel like a lot of the good stuff that EAD Tokyo does is in the late game, and that's where you really see the wacko ideas and the nuts as hard difficulty coming to the fore. This has been really fun though, and especially like the music in the first castle stage is freaking fantastic. Oh my god. I think one thing that I would dock against 3D Land is the lack of new original music, because there wasn't a whole lot of it. I feel like that game was kind of rushed out.
It was like that generic castle music, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah, and in general, the music was kind of rushed. It felt like they were just kind of leaning on the, the old games and the stuff that made those good in terms of music, but they've really put a whole lot of effort into this, and it's especially good because I can basically plug my headphones straight into the gamepad and get all of the music pumping out from there instead of having to worry about turning my TV volume up to hear it. And it's really, really good, and I would recommend kind of doing that for certain stages. Obviously not all of them, because you don't need to hear a lot of this music. Like Mario music isn't, I feel like, my favorite kind of video game arrangements, but they're good. And
we opened the show with Galaxy.
Yeah, but that's really good.
Oh, okay.
There's a distinction about this. That's why I said that some music is definitely praiseworthy and memorable. But it's been fun. But I don't really have a huge amount of deep impressions of it because I am only in World 3, beaten 2 of them. So that's it. You excited to get into this? I know you don't have your Wii U with you right now.
Yeah, no, I'm away from my Wii U just now, as you know, but when I get back, I'm definitely going to pick this up and probably play through it relatively quickly. I don't know. I mean, I might savor it a bit considering how few and far between games like this come out, but yeah, I'm excited.
You see, like, I'm the utter opposite of that when it comes to these games. I will
blast through it.
I devour this shit. Like, I utterly just annihilate it, and that's what I did for 3D Land. It was just like 20 hours, boom, done, and really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll definitely have much deeper impressions of that next time. Hopefully get into the late game and some of the more interesting elements, and we'll probably do the same thing we're doing with Zelda with Mario and get a much more in-depth discussion on the go. But so far, enjoying it, and I have high hopes. So there you go. Alright, well, we're going to take a quick break here before we jump into Zelda, so we'll see you in a second. Alright everyone, welcome back to the show, and we are going to dive right into some deep impressions of The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, brand new Zelda for 3DS, and we've played quite a lot of it. Bali, why don't you kick us off? Tell me, how much have you played so far of this game?
I have played about 12.5 hours according to my daily log thingamabob on the 3DS, and I have done 4 out of the 7 sages, so relatively near the end of the game ish. Probably got a good few more hours to go, but yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit further. I've only got one more dungeon left in the game, so I'm right at the end here, and I'm actually at the very entrance to the final dungeon. So the next time I hop on my 3DS, probably going to crack through that and then probably finish the game off. Although I think I'll probably go back to it to do some 100%ing, because I've really enjoyed my time with this game, and it's not often that I will go back and try and 100% a Zelda. I didn't do it with Skyward Sword. I did a lot of stuff during the main game, but this is one where I'm like, okay, it's really open and it's really easy to explore, and I want to find all this stuff and see all the upgraded stuff, so that's probably what I will do. But let's kind of kick off the discussion with, let's talk about the main mechanic of this game, which is the merging into the walls and being able to turn into a painting and get around places by doing that. This was basically the first thing that we found out about this game when the first trailer was shown, I think in the Nintendo Direct earlier this year. Bali, how have you felt that this mechanic has been implemented and has affected the game?
I really like it. I won't give it away, but the plot that entails when you get it is really good and really clever, and the bit leading away from that is really good. So from a plot perspective, I love it. From a mechanic like perspective, I think it's incredible. It's so clever that you can be walking up to a boulder and you're stuck and you're like, oh, I'll just slip around the side, and you just don't think about that in most Zeldas. You think, oh, there's a boulder, I'm going to need a weapon for that later and I'll come back. But in this game you just slide on by. And there's numerous sections in the game where you're sort of trapped in places, and then you can just go into the wall, go by, and move on with the game. And I think it's really well implemented. And it must have taken, they talked about this on RFN, but it must have taken so much game testing, because it just completely changes the perspective of the entire world. And there's areas of the game that you definitely wouldn't normally see, but you can because of the camera angle and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really, really good mechanic.
Yeah, they're talking about the camera angle. I'm not sure if you heard this bit of trivia, but in the Iwata Asks for Link Between Worlds, it was revealed that the way that they have implemented the camera is so that you can see the front of Link, and so that you can be able to see his full character model, essentially, from a top-down perspective. They slanted the entire world on its side, and they slanted Link on his side. So if you see, like, they have a screenshot of, like, the entire world from a side perspective while it's in kind of the normal mode, and everyone's just like Michael Jackson style Smooth Criminal leaning back. It's really weird and trippy. And
Really?
yeah, that's how they achieved that effect of being able to see Link fully from the top down perspective, because otherwise you would just see his hat, the top of his hat, and nothing else if he was basically straight up. But by having them all lean back, all the stuff lean back, that's how you're able to see it, which is really fascinating, and kind of just makes you think how smart these game designers are, that they're able to get around that kind of a problem by circumnavigating in that way. So it's really cool.
What do you think about the way they implement the mechanic?
I love it, and not only because it is used within the dungeon setting and the puzzles, but because it's used for traversal. And this is like the similarity I feel between the wall mechanic and the beetle from Skyward Sword. And I love the beetle from Skyward Sword simply because it allows you to do so many different things. You can solve puzzles with it, you can explore areas with it, and scout with it. And I feel that this wall mechanic is very similar in that way, because it allows you to traverse through areas in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. You can scout in kind of different rooms and see what the layout is, and you can solve puzzles by getting past areas and getting to switches and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's just so well wrapped up and implemented that I'm blown away. I'm really blown away at how crucial it is to the game, and how you can essentially just bypass a lot of stuff, like you were mentioning with the rock, how you ordinarily would need to use some item to either pick that up or blow it up, and yet it doesn't matter because there's an alternative. And that's another thing which I really like about this game, is the alternatives and the ability to take on each dungeon like at whatever order you want to, and giving you those options. So yeah, really impressed with it. The way that it helps the world exploration, which is what I'm going to move on to as well, is really key, because there are areas in the late game, obviously I don't think this is really a spoiler, but when you get to the Dark World or Low Rule, you're basically going through these cracks in the wall which will transport you there, and to try and get to certain areas, you have to use those cracks in order to enter different segments of the map. And so you're constantly like looking like, okay, so there's a crack up there, up high. How do I get myself up to that level so that I can be on a ledge and go across the top to get in there to move to the Dark World? And I really like how that works. It's really cool.
I don't know if you've done this, but I do this really, really derpy thing, and I've done it quite a lot since quite early on in the game. And that's when you go to Low Rule, and you're still in painting form, obviously.
Yeah.
But you kind of like forget which way you went into the painting, so you just basically press one direction on the analog stick, and you basically just crawl, like, not crawl, you basically sidle back into where you just came from, and you have to go through that cutscene again.
Yeah, I've done that
from
a couple.
yeah, oh.
I've done that a couple of times, and it's
not a complaint at all. It's just a comment on my own derpiness, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just if you're not paying attention, then you're like, oh fuck, I have to go back and back.
Yeah, and then you want to go back. Oh, God,
Yeah,
never mind.
yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, moving on again to like the idea of exploring this world. Obviously, both of us, as we mentioned last time, don't have any experience with Link to the Past, so we don't know this Hyrule as many other people do, and as intimately as most other people do. So what do you think of it? Like, is it fun to explore? Do you like how, kind of compact it is? Because it's not the hugest of Zelda maps, honestly.
Yeah,
and that's expected because it was based on a Super Nintendo game.
Like you've said, I've not played Link to the Past, and I was shocked at how quickly you could get from A to B when I started the game, and it was like, oh, I'm here, and now I'm here, and then it's not that sense of when you're playing something like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess or 3D Zelda, that sense of that massive journey to get to a place. I think I talked about this a lot when we were talking about our favorite dungeons and Wind Waker and traveling to Dragon Roost, and it feels like an
adventure
quest. It feels like a proper quest, an adventure, and I don't want to say that this game doesn't feel like an adventure, but the how tight knit everything is to each other does do something very different from the 3D Zeldas that I'll be honest that I miss, to be honest, and I don't think there's much they could have done about it with a 2D Zelda, but
yeah,
I don't know, perhaps something even as simple as Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks, because there's all that traveling in between. It kind of makes you feel like the world is much bigger than it actually is, whereas with this game it feels maybe they've just said, we're not fooling anyone, we're just gonna, you can walk here, you can walk there, you can, and it feels like they don't even want to go for that, really, that they're trying something different, and
yeah,
I respect them for that. So no, I do love the world.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome that they let you roam free from the beginning. Like, they literally don't hold you back. There are zero barriers in place, the only ones being obviously the item locking, but after the first mini dungeon that you do, you get access to rent every item in the game. So if you want to go to a place, you can basically get there as long as you have the item in your equipment slot. And before you even start any of the first low rule dungeons, you can go to every single part of that world and get every rupee that's hidden away and all the heart pieces and do all the mini games before even setting foot in a dungeon. And I think that that's really it's a thing that they've been talking about, and they talked about this when they were discussing the new Wii U Legend of Zelda, how they're going to rethink Zelda and they're going to change it so that you can basically do dungeons in any order and that kind of thing. And it's a radical departure from what Zelda has been in modern times. It's essentially very similar to what the original Legend of Zelda was, because in that game you could go to any dungeon you wanted. They weren't really item gated, items weren't a major thing in the first Zelda, and so they weren't implemented hugely in dungeons, and you didn't have to rely on one. You could basically just do them in whatever order, and if you got to the 8th dungeon before the first, you'd probably be fucked because it's really fucking hard. But it's just giving you that choice and that ability to do whatever you want and go wherever you want.
I agree. I mean, I really enjoyed the idea that I was a couple of dungeons behind you, but I had still done a dungeon that you hadn't done.
Right,
and
you're getting a different experience, even though I've done more than you have.
Funny story, actually, because our first 3 dungeons we both completely by chance, without telling each other, did the same 3 first dungeons.
Yeah, that
just
was
by complete chance.
It's really weird because we had intended when we were playing this game, we're like, okay, awesome, you can do dungeons in any order. That means that when we come to discuss it on the podcast, we're gonna have different experiences, and then I ring Bally on Skype. I'm like, okay, so what dungeons have you done? And he's like, these 3. I'm like, fuck, I did those 3. And that was really crazy, and they were all in the exact same order as well. So There you go. I guess we had a very similar
And
experience.
the one remaining dungeon you have is the one I was about to do. So there's sort of basically two. That's the one mutual black spot we have, as it were.
Yeah.
And all the other dungeons that one of us has done, sort of thing. So
Yeah, between us, we've experienced
Yeah.
the whole game. So
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah.
awesome. Yeah. But yeah, I think the world exploration has been made also a lot more convenient by the use of the weather vanes and being able to warp whenever you want. I really like that. I also think, like, when I first got the game and I was like, okay, let's see, how do I save in this? And it's like, oh, you have to go to these weather vanes in order to save. I'm like, fucking Nintendo, why can't I just save anywhere? I've been able to do saving anywhere in Zelda games for as long as I can remember. And
What about Skyward Sword?
yeah, I know. It's dumb. Like,
I quite liked it. I quite liked Skyward Sword saving.
I think the Skyward Sword saving was good because like they were really scattered everywhere was the thing. So I didn't really have a major issue with that. But the thing with this was like it's a portable game and I want to be able to save whenever I want. Like, I want to have the convenience of saving wherever. But then, literally 20 minutes later, you get access to the broomstick woman, the witch on her broomstick, and she basically flies you wherever the hell you want to go. So it's really not a non-issue in the end, because if you want to save, you just basically ring her up and be like, bitch, take me on your broom to a weather vane where I can save. And yeah, that's what I did. So it also just makes it much more convenient, like if you want to get to the beginning of a palace. So you can basically go and do all the lead up to a dungeon before actually tackling it, and you can just activate a weather vane there, meaning that, like, for the first 3 low rule dungeons, I essentially just basically opened them all up and then went and did them after the fact, like all 3 in a row. So that was pretty cool. I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the ability, because there's a few of the dungeons that are much trickier to get to than others, and it takes a good maybe 20 minutes, half an hour to get to certain ones, and it's nice that you have that genuine checkpoint where you're like, I know I'm going to restart the game here. Whereas something like even Wind Waker, you can pause, save, switch off, come back in, and you've been dumped somewhere far from where you saved, and you're kind of like, ugh, I feel a bit discombobulated. Where do I go next? Whereas this game, like Skyward Sword, you restart exactly where you saved, and that's really good.
It's definitely convenient. The other convenient things in the dungeon, I think this is a thing which was in Wind Waker with like the jars or whatever, where you could warp to different points in the dungeon.
Yeah, they have it in Spirit Tracks as well.
Yeah,
and I think they have it in Skyward Sword.
I don't know if it's implemented the same way in those games. But the way that it's implemented in this game, I really like, because basically, as soon as you pass,
Have you been using it?
I have been. Like, as soon as you pass the mini boss, you get access to like a little warp point that will take you back to the start of the dungeon. And the reason why I like it is because a lot of the times I will have left chests at the start of the dungeon, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really sure how to get this just yet. Let me continue with the dungeon and see if I get something which will make me open it up later. And a lot of the times, yeah, I did. Like, I was able to open up a way to get there later in the dungeon, so I could literally just use that warp point to go back to the start, go around, collect the chest, and then use it back again to get back to where I was in the later part of the dungeon. And I actually found it really convenient, so it was good. It's also nice to have if you need to take a break in the middle of a dungeon, which I haven't had to in this game, because most of the dungeons have been really short. Like, I think the longest I spent is an hour on a dungeon, which is mostly unheard of for most Zelda games. Like, a lot of the dungeons in Twilight Princess Skyward Sword are like hour and a half minimum, so it's a much brisker
If it's
pace.
your first time and you've never done the dungeon before in a 3D Zelda like Twilight Princess, you're right. It's a whole playing session.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas with
unless you're super keen.
Link Between Worlds, like, you don't have to. You can be like, okay, I'm going to spend 40 minutes doing a dungeon, then I have time to go and do some messing around in the overworld, and then maybe set up myself to go to unlock the next dungeon. And in that same time, in 3D Zelda, you would have barely just finished a single dungeon. So I definitely think that that's a cool thing. Talking about the pacing, like it is a very quick game, and it's super smooth frame rate as well. How do you feel like that's affecting how you're playing the game?
With the frame rate affecting how fast the game plays through, you mean?
Yeah, like how smooth the controls are and how fluid everything is.
Yeah, it's the loading times between areas are non-existent unless you're going in and out of buildings,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
that rarely happens. And it's a very quick loading time in any case. Saving is quick. Calling on Irene, who's the witch, is very quick.
That's a caveat. There's not just a random woman called Irene.
Yeah, calling on Irene. But anyway, yeah, it's really everything's really fast paced, and like I said earlier, it's so quick to even walk between places that combined with the close, tight knit way the dungeons are laid out and how fast you can get through the dungeons, you can do a lot of game in a very short time, and I have mixed feelings on that. I quite like I like the fact I can play a lot of this game very quickly, and I feel like I've really achieved something and really done like the best bits of the game, which in my opinion are the dungeons, and that's really satisfying, because sometimes longer dungeons in the other Zelda games can feel like a slog, but at the same time they feel like more of an accomplishment when you complete them. So I do have mixed feelings on that, but overall definitely good ones. I mean, what do you think about the pacing?
I love how quick it is in like swinging your sword. You can literally just hammer the B button and you will just go crazy with that swing. And yeah, just the circle pad is actually a really good form of movement. Like I thought that in a 2D game I'd prefer using a D-pad. They don't actually give you that option, but it's something that Pokemon still is struggling with. It's moving in 3 dimensions. Like, yeah, no, it's really nice, and I'm very pleased with how technically adept the game is. And talking about like the technical side of things, how do you think it stands up visually? Like I wasn't one of those people, because I know there are a lot of people who didn't like the art style and weren't a big fan of it when it was first revealed, and were like, oh, this isn't what Zelda should look like, and it's going back to that kind of very simple Link design, which I don't honestly like that much. I'm not a big fan of that Link. I prefer the kind of blonde, called more traditional, like the more modern Link, I guess. That one doesn't really appeal to me that much, but it's not really a major factor, in all honesty.
Yeah, I completely have faith in Nintendo keeping on mixing it up. We've had a lot of that Wind Waker Toon Link character in both Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Wind Waker, and there's elements of him in sort of Minish Cap and a lot of the art there. And even in this game, when you're in the wall, you look just like the Wind Waker Link, which is cool. So I don't really have an issue. I'm not the most fussy in terms of what Link looks like, to be honest. I like all the Links, because it's not really about Link for the game.
No, it's he is simply the device through which you fucking do everything. So it doesn't matter what he looks like. You're just playing as him. Yeah, no, I think that it looks really nice though, and I feel like this is a game where if you don't play it in 3D, then I don't understand why you're playing it at all. Like, you need 3D, and it is so crucial to how mechanically the game, introduces itself and uses itself. Like, there are dungeons where verticality is like the main theme, and if you don't see that depth below you, then it's very difficult to even get through and get to the places you need to go.
Yeah, there's lots of grates and areas where you can see through to different floors, and even in the overworld in both Hyrule and Lorule, there's these incredibly good-looking cliff edges where you can see right down into the crevasses, and it's just really great use of the 3D. I know that there was a particular bit you were telling me about last night, MBZ, where I'm trying not to spoil it, but there's a big deep bit that you're looking into, and it graphically looks very impressive.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a major point, and it's really the first game since Mario 3D Land that has legitimately been like, this is why 3D is a central and integral part of the system, and this is how you do it. And I feel like that's the thing with the 3DS, is that not really any other developers, maybe barring Capcom, have been able to leverage its visual power using the 3D. I was hearing a lot of good things about how 3D is used in Phoenix Wright and stuff, but really the two games that have done it the best are Zelda and Mario, and Nintendo really know. I mean, it is their system, they designed the hardware, so they should know how to utilize it. But yeah, it's a great part of the game. Now, I think something that we haven't talked about, which is what a lot of people are kind of very mixed on, is the new item system and how that whole thing works, with the fact that from the very beginning of the game you can rent any item that you want, and as long as you don't die, you get to keep it. So as soon as you die, every rented item you have in your possession will be taken away, and so this kind of opens up, like, how far, like, do you think it affects the dungeons in terms of the way that they're built? Because traditionally in Zelda dungeons, you go through halfway, get an item, and then use that item for the boss and the subsequent areas. Do you like the rental system and using items that way?
It's not even so much the rental system, because I think it's so easy to get rupees in this game that it's almost, you're renting them so seldom that you could just buy them more often. But in terms of running through the dungeon from start to finish with the same item all the way through, yeah, I quite like it. I mean, all the items are relatively simple items. There's nothing. I'm trying to think of an example of a complicated item from another
The spinner,
game,
the ball and chain.
yeah, spinner, ball and chain. They're all quite technical. Even the beetle, that's quite a technical item.
They're
These
very
are all
specific items.
Yeah, they're very, like I said, basic, and the dungeons are masterfully designed around that simplicity, and I really don't feel like I'm missing out on something by going into the dungeon, playing through half of it without an item, getting the item and going to the end. It's probably better, in my opinion, to just go start to finish of a dungeon with the same item, because even though you're using the same item throughout the dungeon, it does still evolve throughout the dungeon how you use that item, and it's like, oh, I didn't know I could use it in this way as well, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously on the bosses you're using it again in another way, and yeah, no,
Yeah.
I really like it, to be honest.
I do feel that when, like, in traditional Zeldas, you basically see, this is the problem I have with Arbiter's Grounds and Twilight Princess, for example, because the first half of that dungeon I really dislike, and is it's just an utter train wreck. It's basically copy and pasted from the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time, where you do the exact same thing and find 4 Poes and use them to activate the elevator or whatever, in this case activate opening a door, and then you get to the fun part where you get the spinner and you're fighting the boss with it, and it's so cool. I wish the Arbiter's Grounds, in this way, I wish that you would have had the spinner from the beginning and they could have designed an entire dungeon around that item. I think that would have been fantastic. And that's the good thing here, is that they can do that. They can start a dungeon and say, okay, you already have the item, let's just make the entire dungeon based around that. And they don't even go super deep with it, because a lot of the times you're juggling 2 items, or you're using the wall merge mechanic a lot more. But I really appreciate the fact that they're not kind of skimping on the first half of dungeons, and they're saying, yeah, you know what, you have the item, let's just give you puzzles that involve it for the entirety. And that's a really great progression, and I feel that that's something that they if they can keep doing in follow-up Zeldas, definitely. Though in terms of the actual renting and buying of items, it does seem to be a little bit broken. You can, you were saying how many rupees there are in the game. You can collect a huge amount, especially if you're doing the Street Pass links, which I have been doing. Some of them give like 200-300 rupees if you defeat them, and that's like a significant amount when it comes to buying an item. Each item you can buy for 800 rupees, apart from a couple of the higher end ones which are 1200. But in total, it's not a huge amount, and you can essentially get every single item pretty quickly. I think I had all the items maybe 3 dungeons into low rule, and then for the rest of the time I was able to just kind of cruise my way through and open up areas and not have to worry about that thing. So yeah, I'm not sure that it's implemented perfectly in this game. I think that they could do and make steps in a future title to refine that, but I definitely think it's an interesting concept, and I'm glad that they changed it up. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the music of the game and the tracks and what we're hearing and the sound design. What do you think, Bali? How is this stacking up in terms of Zelda soundtracks?
The music along with the dungeon design are my 2 favorite areas, definitely. But the music is... I'm not much of a connoisseur when it comes to knowing which track is from which game and how they've meshed them together and things like that, but I just really love this music. And the first time you're in low rule, it really hits you quite hard, I think, the music.
Low rule's theme is the Dark World theme, which is basically from Link to the Past. And I think all of these songs are from Link to the Past, but we, not having familiarity with that game, don't really know that. But the way that they've remixed them is just, it's fucking transcendent. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. And if, like, this is a game you should play with headphones on and just crank the volume right up. It's really fantastic, and I'm super impressed with it.
I was going to say, just what are your final thoughts on the game overall?
I really like it. I think that it's good to have a Zelda which isn't 50 hours long, though I adore those experiences. I definitely think those are much more suited to the console space. In the handheld arena, like, a shorter Zelda makes much more sense, and one that is so briskly paced and so smooth and quick and just damn pick up and play, you know? Like, it's one of those things that I feel about console Zeldas is when you commit to a play session, you're really like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get stuff done and I'm going to do this and that. Whereas this is like, oh, I'll just run around the world. Maybe I'll find some hot pieces and I can just close it. You know, it's really, I think Nintendo has that down really well when it comes to portable gaming. They know the experiences to design for that mode of play. And they do it really well. So I'm super impressed. I obviously played most of the game at this point. I think the ending's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to see like what the final boss shakes out like and how the ending cutscenes look and all that good stuff. But of course, we'll kind of give you our ending thoughts on that next week or next couple of weeks when we have finished the game. But yeah, Bali, any further thoughts there?
Yeah, final thoughts, I'd say that it's a vast improvement on the previous handheld Zeldas. The most recent 2 I'm talking about, Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass. I really think that it's a much smoother experience from what I've played. It's just graphically better, musically far better.
There's no Temple of the Ocean King, so, you know.
Oh, God. And there's no stupid trains and... God, I hate trains. But... they've just really refined it, and they've really just gone really hard with the design, and they've not tried to do too much new stuff that doesn't fully work, such as touchscreen fighting, which is so fiddly and annoying after a while. And they've just decided, right, just going to stick to circle pad, going to stick to these relatively simple weapons. They've not gone for anything over the top that might not work as well, and they've played it safe in some aspects, but they've played it safe in all the right aspects, and that's what I really like about this game.
Excellent. So yeah, we've done a pretty good long talk about Zelda. I feel we've covered most of the bases. Do let us know what you think about Link Between Worlds if you're playing it. Feel free to send in some questions to our email address, nyppquestions@gmail.com. And maybe next week when we've finished, or I keep saying next week, and the next show when we've finish the game, we'll maybe respond to some of those and talk about them. So definitely do that. But we are going to take a break here, and we'll come back very soon with your listener mail. So stay tuned. Okay everyone, welcome back. We are going to tackle some listener mail here. We didn't get a huge amount, so it's going to be a relatively short segment, but you can remedy that by sending your listener mail to nyppquestions@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you and love to read your questions on the show and discuss them. So Bali, you have the first
Yes,
email.
I have some emails. So the first question is from 12 Kezo, and he says, "Hi MBZ and Bali. I know the game has been out a while, but I would like to know who you used on your Fire Emblem Awakening playthrough and who you would recommend I use." I'll admit right now I don't own this game, although I do plan on picking it up in the future. But MBZ, what do you think?
Okay, so my Fire Emblem Awakening playthrough was a while ago, because I played it when it came out in like March or May. I think it was May actually, because there was that long like 1 month wait. It came out in April in the US, and there's a 1 month wait for me. And like Steve Magnitude, he had it, and all those guys had it, and I was like, I want to play it, and they were torturing me with it, but finally got it. And yeah, I love this game, and I'll tell you who I used mainly, but it's going to be a little bit difficult because at the moment they're all like different classes, so it's kind of hard for me to remember because their original classes is what I used during the main game, and so it's a little bit different. But obviously, my main character, the avatar that I used, I made him much more of a magically based character, because at the beginning you get the option as to whether you want him to be more kind of melee or magic based, and I made him more magic based, which kind of helped me out, I think. I had more melee characters to begin with, so it was nice to have that extra balance. So yeah, I was using him, and I ended up marrying him to Lisa, who was the healer, the cleric, and she's the sister of the main character Crom. So you know, just get my best friend in the game going to marrying the sister. That's what it's all about, and that's how I rolled. And yeah, they were a good pairing, and they did really well for me. Another few that I used were Longku, who's a swords master. He's like a Myrmidon, and Tharja, who's a dark mage. He's really good. There's obviously, of course, Donnell. Donnell is one of those characters where, Bali, you'll get this in because you played Sacred Stones quite a bit. You know that there are characters like Ewan and characters like Amelia who start out really terribly, but
terrible.
If you put the time into them and
they just die.
if you actually level them up, they are the best characters in the game, and they are unbelievably powerful, and Donnell is exactly that. He starts off as a villager. He has a fucking bucket on his head. Not a bucket, he has like a pot. He has a pot on his head and wields a stick, and yet he becomes one of the most powerful characters in the game. So I would recommend, because Donald pops up really early in one of the side chapters, you should definitely get him and try and use him in your team, because he will be an asset and a half, and really useful. I used Sumia, who was the main Falcon Knight for me, and she was really great. Definitely a solid Falcon Knight. Crom, obviously, who's the main character, and a bunch of others. There's loads of different ones that I used throughout my playthrough. I can't quite remember like who else was in my main team, but those were a lot of the ones that I was using in general. And so yeah, that's pretty much that. Bali, let's move to Sacred Stones a little bit, so you can have something to talk about on this subject. Like, who the characters that you are using in Sacred Stones?
Oh, testing me on names now. I've played about 17 hours of this game, and I am not very far at all. And I think it's because I'm a bit of a perfectionist to some degree, in the sense that I like to bring the weak characters with me, and then I don't want anyone to die, but they still do die, so I have to restart the level. So I basically fail on very simple levels. But who are the guys I like? I really like Comb.
Yeah.
Because you just stick him in a forest and basically nothing hits him, and I find it really cool that he always dodges hits, and his animation for dodging hits is really cool.
Yeah.
Who else do I like? I really like the archer and the Amy.
Amy, yeah.
Although I've just got the new guy, what's his face? The Prince.
Inez.
Prince Inez, yes.
Yes.
So I know that he's a better archer, isn't he? So
well, he's if we want to get into technicalities, because he's already promoted. Like, Inez is a promoted archer, so a lot of the time when you come across units that are already promoted, they'll end up like basically. Well, obviously we know Pokemon better at this point, but back in the day it was like, oh, if you catch a Pokemon early, it's going to be much better than if you catch it later.
Yeah.
Back then we didn't know that the
ethos.
reason for that was it was EVs and stuff, but
yeah.
now we do. But it's kind of that similar idea where if they're already promoted, you're better off using someone who you've leveled through and have gained stats with. So Namie will, like, in the end, when they both get to level 20 as Sniper, Namie shakes out as a better unit in the end. So
I mean, I have done that leveling up thing, because I've got Ross as my pirate now, which is satisfying.
Ross is a pirate and pirates are free. Ross is a pirate.
So I'll admit that Sacred Stones is having a bit of a hiatus just now as Zelda's come out, but I'll definitely talk about it in future on the podcast when I finish up that game.
Yeah.
Although it'll take me a good 40 more hours probably.
Yeah. A couple more units that I just remembered. I used Gaius, who was the thief. I used Pan, who was she turns into a bunny rabbit. So she turns into this. That sounds really bad. She's like, you know how like there's the Manakets who turn into dragons.
Yes.
She's like. I can't remember what the name is, but she's like an animal beast thing.
Shifter.
Yeah, basically, she turns into like this giant badass rabbit who's really pretty cool.
A were-rabbit.
Yeah, she uses the beast stone to turn into a beast. Yeah, and then I use Naui, who is the Maniket in this game, or the main one. She's awesome as well. I think the more interesting thing about Awakening is the pairings as opposed to the individual characters, because my opinion on Awakening shifted significantly from like chapter 1 to 5 to like chapter 10, because in the beginning I was using just characters individually and standing them next to each other as opposed to pairing them up, and the difference is that when you pair them up, they become so much easier to manage and control because you're moving two characters at once instead of just one, and it's essentially a beefed up unit because they'll help each other out in battle, and like one will guard the other with their armor, or one will attack twice with the other one, and I think that's where things become much more interesting, like how the romances shape out and which marriages you choose to go down with, and all that good stuff. So I'm sure that when you get a chance to play Awakening at some point, we'll get into more of that. But I love this game. I love it to death, and I plan on eventually doing an LP of it when I get a capture card sorted. But yeah, for the moment, that's basically what I did in Fire Emblem with my characters. So I hope that was a good enough response for you. But that's that. So let's move on to the next question, I guess.
Yeah, next question. So this is directly for you, MBZ. MBZ, are you ever going to finish TP, Twilight Princess? I loved what's been finished, and I'm so looking forward to the rest. Also, what 3DS platformers would you most recommend? I finished most of my games, and I'm looking for another. And maybe you guys could do a top 3 or whatever games in each genre you play or something. That would be cool. That's from Saint.
Okay.
So a number of little questions there. Do you want to... dissect.
So let me address the Twilight Princess question.
Oh, he represents millions of people out there in MZ.
Yeah, the millions of millions
this is
yearning.
Important.
I know. So my Twilight Princess playthrough is rather infamous. It's been going on for like 2.5 years. And
you've been saying 2.5 years for about 2 years now.
No, it's not that
much
long.
Longer than that.
It's not that long. So I am going to finish Twilight Princess, and I've said that multiple times. The issue I have with Twilight Princess is the only way that I can record it is by hooking up my Wii to my TV. I've tried recording with Wii U, the quality is crap. I've tried, recording. Like, the problem is that I have to wait half an hour for my TV to stop spazzing out before I can play and record, and that's really a barrier to entry for me. And it's, I will do it. It's just like finding the time and finding a moment to dedicate to being like, okay, I'm gonna play Twilight Princess, I'm gonna record some and get on with it. And just so happens that that opportunity doesn't come around that often, so there'll be like 3 months and then a batch of like 10 videos, and then like 3 months and then a batch of like 5 videos. So that's just how it works, really, and I think that's just how it's going to be. In all honesty, it's always been that way, but never give up on it, because I will finish Twilight Princess. It is an ongoing project, shall we say? So. There you go.
Okay, and which 3DS platformers would you recommend? I mean, we don't know which ones you've already played.
No, I don't know which ones you played, but I'm guessing you probably played Mario 3D Land.
If you've not played that, you need to.
That is the quintessential platformer on 3DS. It is so fantastic. It's really, really great. Trying to think of others, actually. I can think of Rayman Origins was available on 3DS, and that's a game that I think is probably better on maybe Vita or even one of the consoles. But Rayman Origins is a fantastic game. I got it in the Steam sale this summer, actually, and I blazed through that game. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And there are like these segments. You played them in the demo, Bally.
Yeah.
These really awesome segments where you basically, it's a speed run through a level, and if you fuck up once, you're dead and you have to start from the beginning. And I
love that.
I just love those like timing based, precision based platforming challenges, and there aren't a huge amount in the game because they're kind of secret levels that you unlock, but when you get to those, that's like the moments where you're like, yes, this is why I am playing this game. This is why I'm like going through all the other levels to get to these. It's kind of similar in Rayman Legends, where you have the music levels, which are very much like that. They're all based around like hitting those platforms at the precise right moment and syncing it with the music to make it work even better. So yeah, Rayman is a good one to suggest.
What about, you've played and completed both Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers. What about those two?
True, yes. Both of those, I think they're a little bit lower down the list. Definitely New Super Mario Brothers 2 is... it's...
You've really got a thing about this game. I mean... You told me before that you wish you'd skipped it and just gone maybe for the Wii U version.
I really wish I'd done that. I don't think it's a bad game fundamentally. And the problem that I have is it's just so rote. Like, it is the most cookie cutter, bland, it's so just dull. It is a dull Mario platformer, and it has the new super it has the new super plague. Like, it is the same fucking shit again, and I just don't stand for this anymore. There's nothing like innovative about it. There's like, the most innovative thing about this game is the fact that you have a power up which lets you turn things into coins, and you have to collect 1 billion coins. Look, let me tell you something. Collecting coins isn't fun. It's not an integral or interesting gameplay mechanic, and it shouldn't be a basis for a full fucking game. No, I would say don't play New Super Mario Brothers 2. I would say try and play something else.
You can come round to mine in the holidays and we'll play a bit of Mario U.
Yeah, that'll
Don't worry.
That'll make me feel a bit better. Donkey Kong, however, is a solid game. It's obviously, if you haven't played it on Wii, then this is a perfect time to pick it up, especially because they adapted the controls, meaning you no longer have to shake the Wii remote to do a roll on the ground, which I know a lot of people had trouble with. And also, if you aren't super good at platformers, it has the kind of the more casual mode where you get an extra hit to take, or an extra 2 hits, I think it is, if you're using Diddy Kong as well, because you get 6 hearts as opposed to 4 hearts, which is really nice and much better for portable play, because you're not constantly stuck on a level. It means they go by much faster. I basically beat this game over the course of a week, just going through a world each night, and it was a challenge, man. This game is balls hard, even though I was playing on the easier difficulty. It's so hard. The final boss, I was sitting there for literally about 40 minutes, and I was giving up all hope, and then I finally did it, and it was so satisfying. Donkey Kong Country Returns is one of the hardest platformers that I've played, and beating that game I feel is an achievement. So if you want something that's difficult, I would go with that. But then actually, I'm going to come to my favourite platformer on the system, and one that you should buy and is very affordable and is one of my favourite games I played this year. I think I actually played it last year. Yeah, it was last year.
This is better than 3D Land?
They're both very different. Because this is
I don't
this
even
is
know
different.
what you're about to say here.
This is VVV,
which
is
that counts as a platformer.
It is a platformer. I mean,
Okay.
you're jumping, so
Okay.
that's the main mechanic. It is a nuts hard fucking. It's what they call torture platform. It's in the same vein as Super Meat Boy, masochistic. It's a masochistic platformer where you will die hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times in this game, but it is never frustrating because of how quickly you respawn and how quickly you're back into the game and trying it again. And that's the hook with Super Meat Boy. It's the hook with this game. It's the hook with Electronic Superjoy. That's a game that I'm playing on Steam right now. It's the hook with They Bleed Pixels. All these games that are masochistic platformers, and I adore them. I love them, and just because they're so tight and they are so challenging and satisfying when you beat them. I recommend VVVV to everyone. I think it is an absolutely excellent experience. It's an indie game developed by one guy, one dude made the whole game, music, assets, design, everything. He did the entire thing on his own. I think it's a fucking achievement. So I heartily recommend VVVVV. Or V6,
Cool.
or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
So what about the last bit of his question? And he's suggesting that we do a sort of top number of games in each genre that we play, or something. So.
I don't think that we have really enough time to address this now. I think what we can do, though, is make that maybe
we'll think about it.
Yeah, we can make that a segment on another show and address that stuff in more depth. But yeah, no, certainly that's something that we could look at.
Maybe racing or platformers or.
Yeah.
But we'll think of something.
We'll think of something.
Okay, right. Last question this week from Meowth900. My question is, how was the Professor Layton game? I'm in North America and you guys are in the UK. Okay, you're getting all the games first, and I'm asking you because you get them first.
Well, I haven't played it, so I can't really comment on the new Layton game. I am a fan of Layton, but I'm much more of a fan of Phoenix Wright. So I've played the first 2 Professor Layton games, which they're good, but the problem I have with Layton is that there's this divide between the gameplay and the story, which sometimes coalesces, but most of the time doesn't. And what I mean by that is the main gameplay in Layton games is solving puzzles, and that is very distinctive from what you're doing in the story. Sometimes the puzzles and story will cross over, where a puzzle will link into something that's going on in the story, but mostly they are very distinct entities, and I feel like there's this disconnect there, which I'm not super enamored with, because you get to like these puzzles and you're like, okay, why am I figuring out why 6 pigs cross a river and 2 wolves on the other side and get each to the other side? You know, that kind of thing, those kind of puzzles. That's essentially what this game is. And they're good. And the problem I have is that I probably have gone a little bit overkill by playing the first 2, and I played them quite close to one another, so I'm not really wanting to go back to the series for a little while. But yeah, that's really my issue with it. But the thing is, like, this is a new one on 3DS, and I haven't played any of the 3DS Layton ones yet, so maybe those will be a bit better. Not that I'm saying they're bad, but just maybe they'll be more interesting to me in terms of, like, mixing the story and puzzle elements together. I don't know about you, Bally, because you don't really know anything about Professor Layton, so...
Yeah, I know nothing. I know it's got, like, tons of puzzles in it, and I'd be keen to try maybe the first one at some point, but
yeah,
it's
definitely
not particularly high on my list, but
no
things to do. But anyway,
yeah, no, the stories are really cool. The stories are always like fucking wacky as hell. They make no sense, and you get to the end. It's very similar to Phoenix Wright in the story department, but I feel that Phoenix Wright is it's a much stronger game for me anyway, because the gameplay and the story are so intertwined, and it makes it more enjoyable, in my honest opinion. So that's that.
Cool.
So that's that.
So
just before we go, I did have a quick other question from Twitter, which I can't remember who it's from, but they asked, "Who is your favorite Link?" As in from Zelda, like which is your favorite design for Link?
We covered this a bit before, actually, but yeah,
A little bit. Bally?
So my favorite Link, well, even though I said it doesn't affect me a whole lot, my favorite Link is Toon Link, because Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda.
You're a Wind Waker fanboy, so
exactly.
I'm not surprised.
What about you? You like Blondie?
I like Blondie. He does it for me. He's got it going on. Yeah, the Twilight Princess Skyward Sword style is definitely my favorite Link design. It's the most modern and obvious, and I don't know, it's the one that I'm most familiar with, honestly, and I think that's just kind of where you lean towards, like the one that you have most familiarity with and the one you've kind of seen the most, and I've seen that one the most in my time playing Zelda, so that's who I roll with, that dude. So there you go. Simple questions. Excellent. Simple answers. But let's get ready to talk about more Zelda. Before we do that, though, because a lot of people who don't want to hear spoilers are probably going to end the podcast here. So thanks for listening if you are going to leave us. But
remember to email us.
Yes. Bali, read out the fucking email.
So email us at nyppquestions@gmail.com, and we will answer as many questions as possible.
Yes, and
try and word them nicely, because they will be read out.
Yes, and sometimes we also trip over our words, so it helps.
And follow us on Twitter and Miiverse.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you want to do yours
that
first?
All right. I'm Lord MBZ on Twitter and Lord MBZ on Miiverse, which is something that we should be talking about because we're a Nintendo podcast, and I'm assuming that people who listen to this like own a Wii U and are able to follow.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing.
I am at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91, and that is also my name on Miiverse. I will be playing lots over the Christmas vacation, as Americans call it. So yeah, follow me if you want to find out how we're getting on.
Okay.
But anyway.
Awesome. So that's going to close it out for the listener mail, and goodbye to those who are leaving. But if you're sticking with us, we're going to jump into some spoilers for Link Between Worlds. See you guys in a bit. Alright everyone, if you are here, that means that you have played a significant portion of The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, or at least, you're deep enough to where you can handle spoilers, and if you do not want to be spoiled, then turn this off right now, because we are not holding
Maybe
back.
we should make clear that we've not seen the end of the game yet, so like we can spoil a lot, but not everything.
Yeah, we haven't finished the game, but we have seen a majority of what there is to offer in terms of dungeons. So let's talk about the story first of all, Bally.
So
Yuga is the main villain here. We got Hilda in Low Rule. She's like fucking Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Zelda Hilda going on. She has a Triforce staff, which is so awesome, and I love her
very
design.
awesome.
She reminds me a lot of Midna. She has red eyes and dark hair. What do you think?
I really like the plot at the start of the game where you first become 2D and you're stuck in that painting
Yeah.
and you're like left behind in the dungeon after battling Yuga for the first time and you're like, shit man, what do I do now? And obviously you know what's coming, but you're like, and you come out of the wall and then you have to leave the dungeon and you use all the new tricks that you've just learned on how to leave that dungeon. And I just really love that in that like little bit of the game.
Yeah. The second battle with Yuga is really cool as well. It's a lot harder than the first one. When you're like in the castle after doing those introductory dungeons.
Oh, that one. Yeah, no, I failed on that like once.
Yeah. He turns into like 3 different versions, and you have to hit the one with the lighter staff, and then smash him that way. But then when you enter Low Rule and the dark, and basically Yuga becomes like Ganon and Yuga at the same time. He's basically like Pig Ganon, but with like braids at the back of his hair, and it's so hilarious. I just love that.
Yeah, they basically throw a ton of story at you then.
Yeah.
And then there's just this massive gap.
Well, I guess like every time that you get near a dungeon in the Dark World, Hilda will be like, "Oh, you're near this, and this is the sage," kind of stuff.
So say I, Hilda of Low Rule.
Oh, that line is used so many times. So say I, Hilda of Low Rule.
So wistful and sort of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's really
so
like.
Say I.
It's really like what's the word? Medieval.
Very Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty cool. But yeah, you're right. There is kind of a lack of story elements between, like, I guess as soon as we finish the final dungeon, it'll start kicking into gear again, and there'll be some more cutscenes.
Yeah, it does feel like it's about to hit us hard.
Yeah,
you're right.
Definitely.
And I have mixed feelings that they have a lack of story up until then, but at the same time, I guess that's what you get when all the dungeons are. You can do them in any order. It'd be very hard to implement a linear story in the same way, you know.
Yeah.
It's not really something you think about when you think, oh yeah, sweet, you can do loads of dungeons in any order you want, but then you think, oh, but yeah, I guess the story takes a bit of a kick in the balls as a result. But
yeah, like in Twilight Princess, for example, when you bring, I think after you beat the water lake bed, after you beat lake bed, they have that like cutscene with Zant, and he comes along and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna turn you into a wolf again," and all that. Oh, that's an awesome cutscene. And that something like that isn't really
loads of good cutscenes.
Yeah, something like that isn't super possible, I guess, in this game. Partially because it's 3DS and it isn't as powerful, so it can't really handle too much of that stuff. But also because, as far as this game goes, it's definitely just hinders on mechanics, and the story is much more in the background. But it's just it's appreciated that it's there, and I enjoy that it's there. But yeah, I definitely think the final boss is going to be really interesting. Did you like, when you get transported after beating the second Yuga battle to Hyrule Castle, did you think that you would have to do another battle? Because he walks towards you, and like it looks like, okay, are you serious, game? I'm in an arena. I'm in an arena here. It looks like I'm gonna face him down again, and then Hilda like.
I'll admit that didn't cross my mind, but looking back on it maybe should have.
Yeah. I've got a feeling that maybe that's the arena that you're going to go back to and fight him in there. It's probably
Yeah,
a good
maybe.
shout.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I after what Jeff Kanata said on Weekend Confirmed, it sounds like it's going to be hard as balls.
It's going to be difficult. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. But
So let's talk a bit more about the dungeons themselves.
yeah.
So which ones have you not done yet?
So the two I've not done are that one by the Lost Woods,
The Skullwoods?
Skullwoods, and that one that is south and central where you use the hook shot. I can't remember its name.
The Swamp Palace?
The Swamp Palace, I think. And obviously I've not done the one that you've not done yet, which I'm actually going to do next, which is the Ice Palace.
It's just Death Mountain, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but yeah, out of the dungeons I've done, my favorite is probably Thief's Hideout and the Sand Palace. Is that what it's called? Sand Palace?
Yeah. So what is it you like so much about Thieves' Hideout?
Okay, so I saw the boss for Thief's Hideout, on the trailer, and when I saw it on the trailer, I just, got really excited because in this boss, he puts his shield in front of you. He's like this ghoul kind of guy with a sword and shield.
You
And
know
he puts
what
his
he
shield.
you know what he reminds me of? Like really, really reminds me of a lot is the mini boss in Arbiter's Grounds. You remember that guy? He's like
Yes.
a ghost with like a skull head, and he has like a giant sword and stuff. The design of this guy reminded me so much of that mini boss.
Yeah.
That's partially the reason like I love this boss so much because such a cool design.
And my favorite bit about him is that he blocks with his shield, and then you merge into his shield like it's a wall, and then he flips his arms back, and now you come out of his shield again, and now you're on the back of him, and while you're on the back of him, you slash at his backside basically.
Basically, his exposed area where he could
His exposed ass.
is under. Yes, under.
Yeah, and you just wail on him, and it's just a really nicely designed boss. And the dungeon itself, they kind of imply that it's the first one you can do because it's quite obvious how to get there, and you're already in the same area that it's in when you first come into Lorule. So it's implied that you can do it first, and it is noticeably more straightforward, I would say, than the other dungeons I've done.
It definitely took me the shortest. Like, out of all the low rule dungeons, Thieves' Hideout was the quickest. It was, I guess, half an hour at tops for me. Because, like, another thing that Thieves' Hideout is being pointed as the first dungeon is the fact that you don't need a specific item for it. And that is also kind of obvious with the boss because the main thing you do for the boss is use the merge power. There's no item necessary. So, it's really cool in that way. And I also like the cooperative mode, basically, with the second
nice.
thief girl with you.
It would be nice if there was more plot around these thieves and her and everything. But, I mean, we've already said that it's kind of weak on plot in some ways.
Yeah, it's just very mechanics heavy. And talking about the mechanics of how that cooperative thing works, it's so refined because there's no bullshit. There's no like, oh, you have to talk to her every time and go through some dialogue and be like, oh, I'll follow you now, just like, and then you go.
I'll just conduct the command melody.
Yeah, exactly. There's no superfluous bullshit. You literally press A for her to follow you, press A again for her to stop following you, and it's that simple.
Very streamlined.
Yeah, and there is none of that asinine, annoying crap in the middle, and it just makes it like they don't slow you down in that dungeon by adding her to you and making an extra kind of a vehicle to take on the dungeon. She's almost like the item of that dungeon where because you don't get one, you don't use one. She like most of the puzzles for the second half revolve around navigating the environment and getting her across places. And they just make it so easy to do that, which I appreciate hugely.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's just a really smooth dungeon and one of my favorites. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So I want to talk about Skullwoods, but you haven't done it yet. But like this is a dungeon where the boss made me want to tear my hair out. Like it was really hard. And I'll just say that the boss for this dungeon is in keeping with the rest of the dungeon. It makes a lot of sense for it. But you heard me in the Skype call. I was like, fuck. This is
Yeah,
so difficult.
if you've not experienced it before, just Skyping with someone who's failing on a Zelda boss and just them going, "Ah, I'm gonna die. It's quite satisfying. And
So I have a story about Skyward Sword when I was playing that on Skype with Nick and like Fizz in the background, and I was fighting the boss of the sand ship, and that boss, when it grabs you, you have to like shake the Wii remote to get out of the grab, like to get back on the ground. And so every time it happened, I was just like waggle, 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 and like they were in the Skype call, they have no idea what the hell's going on. Like why am I randomly saying waggle, waggle, waggle? And yeah, it was a bit weird. So that was pretty funny.
is this the infamous boss that looks like Mike?
Yeah, this is the aforementioned in the previous podcast boss.
Mentioned.
Yes, that boss.
They should be the mascot of our podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. So let's talk about the Desert Palace because you played that one as well.
Yes, no, this is probably my favorite of the ones I've played. Even more so than Thief's Hideout.
I thought you said Thief's Hideout was your favorite.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I thought I said both of them were my favorite.
I guess you can tie with both of them.
Okay, well, it was a tie, but this one, having thought on reflection,
Yeah.
is probably my favorite. I've just finished, well, not just finished, but finished very recently Spirit Tracks, like I said, and the last weapon in that game is the Sand Rod, and I really, really liked that weapon in that game, and they just really streamlined that weapon for this game and made it far more powerful in a way. It's the blocks of sand that you create are much bigger and more impressive, and on top of that you can merge into them like it's a wall, which is a really clever thing to do. Like it was clever in Spirit Tracks where you could guide Zelda across paths that you created, but this game it's just smoother and much, like I've used this word a lot, streamlined.
Yeah.
It's just much better than that game, and they made it like graphically with the 3D. It looks really cool when it comes boom straight towards your face, and
Oh yeah.
with the 3D. I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I was about to make the point about being able to merge into the sand dunes. Like, when you figure that out and it clicks, you're like, oh, you geniuses. Like, that is so cool. Like, when those kind of moments happen in Zelda games, those I think are the most satisfying, and that's the reason I come back to playing these games, because of those instances where you're just like hit with the magic of this game design, and you're like, these people, let me pay them more money for this. Like, it's not enough what I paid already. They are really smart when it comes to those kind of areas. And there's like,
What about? Sorry, you go ahead.
this dungeon is a little bit similar to how water dungeons traditionally operate, I feel, because there's a lot of moving sand from one area to another and making levels higher and lower. And I actually had quite a bit of trouble on this one because I was being dumb and forgot about this room like near where the boss key is, where I had to go first before I got the boss key because I needed to raise the sand level. But when I figured that out and got that sorted, it was fine. And there was this room where there are these blocks which you have to blow up with bombs, and they provide bombs for you. But I was like, okay, how the hell do I get these bombs to those blocks? So I was trying to throw them up there, and I was like, why is it not working? Like, how do I do this? And then I realized that the sand is like present underneath these pillars, and what you have to do is to use the sand while a bomb is on one of those areas next to it.
Yeah, that was so satisfying.
Lift it up next to it, and then that will blow up the blocks, which is, when I got that, I was like, oh, yes, okay, nice, sorted that out.
What did you think about the boss?
Yeah, the boss of this one is really tough. I thought this...
I found it easier than others, but...
I don't know. I definitely think like it's probably my second hardest boss that I've had to take down.
Really?
I don't think I died on it because I had a fairy, but I had to be really kind of careful around it the second time when I got my HP back. My hearts were refilled, because you're essentially in an arena where if you fall into the sand, you lose like hearts, and if you get hit by all these things, you lose. There's so many ways to lose hearts here as opposed to other areas, other boss arenas anyway, which makes it a lot more difficult to be, conservative and keep your life going. I think that if you're smart about it and you don't get hit, then it's a lot easier because you can use the master sword or the swords like I think it's the master sword that only gets this is the beam that you shoot out when you're at full health, because that basically helps you get the long range and are able to get far away.
No, I was never in that situation with this boss.
I was at the beginning, but once I lost, a heart, I was like, right, fuck it, I need to go in and just hammer the B button. The other thing I found about this boss, like, so many hits to take it down, so many hits, like, it was...
Yeah, I find that about a lot of these bosses, actually. It's like, it's not this whole kind of 5 hits, you're done. It's often taking me 6, 8, 10 hits. And maybe I'm just not wailing on that B button fast enough sometimes, but wow, they take a lot of hits.
Yeah, it's nice actually to get away from that, to get away from the traditional 3 things and done with a Zelda boss, which is every game. It's like, okay, I've got to do this sequence and then hit him once, and then do this sequence, hit him once, and then this.
It makes them feel more like a proper battle, like an actual...
It's much more like Metroid, because Metroid, you're not necessarily using specific items on bosses. It's much more of a battle of attrition, and you're wailing on them. And there is use, like, in this battle, for example, the Sand Rod isn't used offensively. It's used for your advantage in terms of traversal. But the only way to deal damage to the boss is to use, like, either bow and arrow or to just hit it with a sword. And you're not tied down. Like, you don't have to use a specific item to deal damage, which is what I like about it. It gives you that freedom.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that having that ease with where you're basically using the item to get them into the position where you wail on them, and that's nice. I mean, other Zeldas do that as well, but you don't feel as under pressure.
Yeah. Under pressure. Anyway, what other dungeons do you want to talk about? Which ones have you done? The other ones?
The Dark Palace.
Yeah, let's talk about the Dark Palace.
Now, this was my hardest boss by a long way. Now, it was the first dungeon I did, like yourself though, but you did it like first time, and it took me like a bazillion times. And I think it was because I didn't merge into the walls because I was just being an idiot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was awkward, but
I think that this dungeon in particular does probably the best job of utilizing multiple items. Not only in the dungeon itself, but also within the boss battle, because the items here that are necessary are the bombs and the lantern. And the lantern is something you get straight from the beginning, like very early on. And it's not really.
I really like the lantern in this game. It's very simple, doesn't run out of fucking oil.
You know what also is the thing we didn't talk about in the previous segment, but the way that items work in this game, there's no picking up bombs or picking up arrows. It all uses the singular purple meter, which I love. I think that's such a, again, we use this word loads, but making this game so much more streamlined, that is a huge factor and has a huge part to play. It just stops the need for unnecessary chests that contain bombs and unnecessary pots that contain arrows and that kind of thing. Like, it just makes things so much easier, and it allows you to concentrate much more on the dungeon puzzles and the combat as opposed to worrying about inventory management.
Yeah, I'll actually disagree with you on this a little bit. Part of me inside of me thematically is going, ugh, because like just the idea of having infinite arrows, there's something about that that's just like annoys me in this really simple, stupid, childish way. But I kind of like the luxury in other Zelda games where you can upgrade, say, your quiver, and you can carry, say, 60 arrows, and just having the ability to get yourself up to 60 arrows, find something you want to shoot at, and just absolutely wail on them. And you can't do that in this game, and that does annoy me a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. There's the limitation where if you want to, like, for example, on a boss, you can go crazy with the sword. There's no limit to that thing. You can just hammer on it. Whereas if you want to, like, put loads of arrows, it's not like in Metroid where you can just slam down missiles because you have like 200 missiles and you just keep going crazy with them. The arrows will take time to recharge. You can only fire so many at a time. Yeah, I understand that. I definitely feel you there. But the thing I like about it is that it makes you manage just a single bar as opposed to trying to manage multiple facets, because the bar accounts for not only your item usage, but also your merging into the walls. And I think in this dungeon we're talking about in particular, the Dark Palace, that's really important for the boss, because you need to keep the bombs going and hitting him, and you need to be able to be merging into the wall as well, which is something you weren't doing, so that's probably why you didn't, have much consciousness about that system there. But yeah, no, I think the boss in this dungeon was a lot of fun. I thought it was relatively easy to figure out, and that's the thing, like, this game hasn't really got bosses that are hard to understand how to defeat them. And that's something that I feel is a little bit missing. Like in traditional Zeldas, the kind of the real battle is the mental one, where you're figuring out, where do I go with this boss? How do I approach him to find the weak point?
How many hearts can you lose before you know how to do it, sort of thing. And if you go in there knowing how to do it, then it's so much easier.
Yeah, I feel like the time to figure out how to beat a boss in this game is a lot quicker. Like, you're like, okay, that's the thing, I'll try it, yeah, it works. Okay, let's kill him. Like, it's a much faster experience as opposed to the kind of more cognitive way that you deal with enemies in other Zeldas. But yeah, no, I really enjoy the Dark Palace. Again, talking about how it uses the bombs and the lanterns. That's, those are very heavily leveraged here, and I think just much more so than in the other dungeons, where the item is used but not as much as it is in this one. I also want to comment on the area leading up to it with the stealth segment. What do you think about that?
I love the actual mechanics of this scenario, but I again, like, there's something lacking in. You get a little brief spiel from Hilda saying, "Oh, these people used to be my subjects," or some random crap like that, and it's just like, well, that's interesting, but maybe if they were developed a bit more or something. It's just, they're really random, I find.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You're sort of walking along, you're like, who the hell are these guys? What? Like, it's very strange. So in terms of the story, I'm not a huge fan of them.
I'll be honest, that kind of thing never occurs to me. I'm just like, oh, these are enemies, let me get past them. Like, I don't even like think like, oh, why are these guys? It's just like, oh, okay, I need to.
What are they guarding? The Dark Palace?
I don't know. Does it matter? Like, that's.
Yeah, because like Wind Waker, it's very clear that there are guards guarding the Forsaken Fortress, and that you have to get past them. Blah blah blah. These guys are just like, oh yeah, they used to be my subjects. And then what? What happened to them? Why are they badass? Why do they have beams coming from their heads? Like, I'm missing something here.
Fair enough, but like.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I just don't care. Like, that's my stance on it. I honestly don't care. My objective is get past the beamy-eyed weirdos, and that's that. It was nice because it gave me a little bit of nostalgia for Ocarina of Time, the very beginning of the game, where you're doing that stealth segment, getting past the guards. This is a lot easier.
They have that in Spirit Tracks as well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that they just reuse in Zeldas in general. Yeah. But it's a lot easier in this game because you are so hidden by being a painting in the wall that they have, like, basically very difficult.
And they do it in both that bit where you're getting past those random guys with lasers on their heads, and they also do it in the Thief's Hideout. But you end up in these prison cells that you can just sort of escape by becoming 2D, and it's just hilarious that they keep putting you back there.
Yeah.
They don't realize that you just have this trick up your sleeve that gets you. I don't know, it's very funny. Yeah. It's quite satisfying the first time you do that. It's like, oh, I'm in prison, oh god, and then I'll just slip out the side. Here we go.
Very easy, yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on for like spoilers and that kind of thing? What are the? Is there another dungeon you've done that you wanted to talk about, or you pretty much?
I'm just trying to think. No, I don't think there is actually. I think we've talked about all the ones I've done.
Turtle Rock you did, didn't you?
Turtle Rock, yeah, that's the only dungeon I've done where I left chests behind because I was just like, ugh. Yeah, and I struggled both in the dungeon and with the boss in terms of losing hearts just to fire and falling off and this and that. And that's even when I had upgraded my ice rod. So like I probably found that the toughest out of the ones I've done so far.
Mm. Yeah, no, I definitely think it was a good idea to go into this dungeon with the upgraded ice rod,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I don't know.
I told you to do that.
I don't know how many times I would have died otherwise. Like, it made it so much easier. And I did get all the chests, by the way. But I understand why you had trouble and why it was difficult for you to think about how the hell to get to those chests.
I guess my brain is just not as developed as yours.
Well, I mean, clearly I am intellectually superior. No. I think, like, the thing in that dungeon is you're using the warp panels, right, to get around.
Yeah.
And so you have to get to a specific warp panel, which will then lead you to a specific room, which will then get you to those chests. Actually, a lot of probably the chests that you didn't get are the ones where you have to defeat all the enemies in the room. That's a couple of chests popped up for that reason.
Yeah. No,
So there are those fireworms that pop out in that main room. You have to kill all of those fireworms and the chest will pop up. And then in the other room where all the ghosts are, you have to defeat all the ghosts in that room to pop up a chest as well. And those chests only contain like rupees and stuff. It's not a big deal.
The big one. What does the big one contain? Ore.
Oh no, you need the big one. Do you want me to tell you what's in the big one? Because
Tell me.
The Hylian shield.
Oh my fucking god.
So I would say if you didn't get that, just go
Does it
back.
guard you from fire?
It basically reduces damage from magical attacks, I think, or it just protects you more from magical attacks or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, you get the Hylian shield.
Right,
So
well, I know where I'm going before I go anywhere else.
yeah, go back and get that definitely. If you can't figure it out, then look up a guide on how to do it because it's kind of necessary. I think all you need to do is just kill the ghosts in the room. I'm pretty sure that's it. You just use the ice rod on them, and they should be pretty simple. So yeah, I
have it appeared with all the pillars next to it. I just don't know how to get to it.
Right. Okay. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Don't have my newbie chat.
We'll deal with that later.
We'll deal with that later.
As well. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Like I've done the Swamp Palace, which you haven't, which is the Water Dungeon, and I've done the Skull Woods as well. And yeah, the Water Palace is definitely less painful than most water dungeons are. It's good, and there's also an item in there which makes the game a lot easier, and it's probably why I had less trouble in Turtle Rock than you did. But I think that if you want to maintain the challenge, then you should not do the Swamp Palace until the end. Maybe leave that as the last one, and then you'll find it a lot more difficult. But I kind of have the upgrade, and it's making things easier for me. So maybe that's something that you should try and avoid. But I think we've done a good amount here. Like maybe a little bit about the upgraded items. How many upgraded items do you have?
3.
Okay.
I think I've done the bow and arrow, the bombs, and the fire, the ice rod.
Yeah, I've got the ice rod, the boomerang, and the bombs done.
I'm intrigued as to what they're going to do for like the sand rod or something.
I have no idea, honestly. That's something we should find out. So maybe I'll invest some Maimais into discovering what that's all about.
There are 100 Maimais in the game. Are there 10 items?
I think so. I think if you include the bug net, it's 10. I don't know if it counts on the bug net though. That's my question.
I can imagine that you can upgrade the bug net for a bigger bug net. But...
Or maybe there's just a reward at the 100th one for getting all 100 of them. Maybe that's it. I'll go after those and try and get them. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I think we've spoiled significant amounts of this game.
Yeah,
We've had a good
did a
chat
lot of
here,
job.
definitely. Um, so, yeah, this is basically gonna close out the podcast. Bali, it's been fun. This one definitely.
It has, it
Lots
has.
of Zelda chat. Um, and probably the same with Mario next time. So be on the
Yes,
lookout for
absolutely.
that. I think I'm going to mention this at the start of the show as well, but we are trying to get the show onto iTunes, and that is proving rather difficult for me right now. So I'm going to do my best with that, but be assured that we'll eventually do that. If not, I'll try and provide like a download link to an MP3 or something if people want to listen to this on the go. That'd probably be a good idea. But yeah, Bali, thank you for joining me.
We will sort it out.
Yeah, we will indeed.
We will.
Any closing words here, Bali?
I don't know, just
Play Zelda.
glad.
Buy Zelda.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. If honestly, this is up there with 3D Land as the two games you should own on 3DS, in my opinion.
The essentials.
The essentials.
Yeah. So, thank you very much for listening, and I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks. As always, remember sending in that listener mail, and I hope you guys enjoyed. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.